Hi guys, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a new episode of Mumdane. We are on episode 4 right now. This is our 4th episode, and today's topic is something that I love talking about. I love bringing this up with other moms because it just gives so much clarity into the lives, like our lives, our roles as mothers, like looking at our kids. And it just gives us a better understanding of their behavior. It just gives so much clarity, basically. And so today's topic is about sensitive periods. But since I'm doing this new thing where I'm making the videos available on YouTube, I'm just going to tilt the screen. So I'm just going to ask you guys to switch your phones sideways so that when I upload it on YouTube, it's a bit more clearer. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to jump right into it because it's such an in-depth topic, and I know I'm not going to do justice to sensitive periods, like discussing about it on this platform. It's such an extensive topic, and there's so much that we have, like myself, even though I've been studying it since I was 18, there's still so much that we can learn from it, so much that we can continue to learn from it, and so I'm just gonna jump right into it. So essentially, for those of us who might not know what it is, a sensitive period is a time. It's a time frame in a person, in an individual, where they have basically it's a time of psychological growth. So a child, and it is more visible in a child during their first phase of life. So between the ages of 0 to 6, it is more evident, it is more clearer, and it's like, it's easier for you to understand it, but to identify it better. So essentially what happens is in these time frames, it could be of any duration. It could, no two children will go through the same sensitive periods at the same time. And what happens during a sensitive period is the child is able to absorb something, like let's say they have an interest towards language. So this could last a couple of months, it could last a couple of weeks, it could last years. We can't really say, it depends, it varies from child to child. And what happens is during this stage, during this sensitive period, that child is able to grasp so much more of that stage that they are going through, as opposed to if they were, if they were not in that sensitive period. So an example that I could give is when my daughter's first sensitive period that I identified was, like, aside from her sensitive period to movement, which is something that children go through at a very, very early age. But aside from that, something that stood out was when she was 6 months old, she had a sensitive period to using her hands, squishing things mostly. She loved exploring her sense of touch. So generally children do explore in their early ages, they do explore using their 5 basic senses, but at this particular time, she was more interested in exploring with her hands. She liked touching things, squishing things, mixing things up. So that was her sensitive period. And that was one of her first sensitive periods that I could identify. She might have gone through ones earlier than that I might have missed. And so what I decided to do was to cater to that, and what I did was, if you can see over here, this was her first painting that she did at 6 months old, and what she did was, what I did was, I would give her colors, paints, different textures of food. I basically did baby-led weaning, so it really helped cater to that. So she would love squishing things up. I would keep her on a high chair to limit the mess, and she would just go crazy. She would mix things up, like, just squash it, play with it, do whatever she wanted. She wasn't as interested in putting things in her mouth as my son was. He entered this sensitive period at 4 months of age, and it went on until he was 1.5. Whereas my daughter's sensitive period to using her hands, her motor skills, That lasted till I think she was 1. So that was 6 months for her, and it took longer for him. So no two children go through the same sensitive periods. It's very clear, even if I take my own kids as an example. So so I actually I a couple of years ago I discussed this on another platform. It was a Facebook group, and a mom said that, I don't really remember too clearly the exact wordings of that mom, but essentially she would say that her child would constantly play with their water dispenser and leave pools of water on the floor, and like she would try disciplining him, stopping him from it, and if nothing was working, he would keep doing it. So she was at a bit of a loss, and she didn't know what to do. And she came onto the platform to get advice from other moms. And so what I told her was that my child actually had just come out of that stage at the time. She had also been very interested in playing with water. So what I liked to do was that I decided to cater it differently, because obviously this is not something that we would like to encourage. But you can see that the child is interested in water, so perhaps that's a sensitive period for them. They like to see, the way water works. It's such an interesting thing. Liquid textures, it takes up any shape, any form. They love water. Even we love water as adults. I'm not just saying like for drinking, but playing in the rain, stuff like that. I don't know about everybody, but I love playing in the rain. So I can't expect my kids to not be interested in that. So what I did advise her was that, maybe you can try taking this to the washroom, to the toilet, and giving her maybe 2 cups of water, like you have a Montessori activity where it's just pouring activities. Maybe try catering to that need of that child, because the child is not naturally destructive. That's not something that the child is. It's just that the child wants to explore, the child wants to learn. So I advised her on that. I don't remember if she got back to me or any such thing, but then what I'd like to take out of this is that the children have different ways of exploring and different needs at different times. And if we are able to cater to those needs in a productive way, we can have like amazing outcomes from kids, because especially that age between 0 to 6 can be like, it's such a prime age for them to absorb. They absorb so much within that age. We do have sensitive periods as we grow older. We have times where we are more interested in something and we are less interested in something else that might have interested us previously. But that would be what a sensitive period is. But like at that age, you get so much more out of it, as opposed to when kids are older. That age of 0 to 6 it's such prime age for them to absorb anything. So another example that comes to mind is when my daughter was 1.5. She was very interested in using pens, markers, just drawing, artworks, painting, stuff like that. So that's when I actually got into making the art wall for them, as you can see behind me. This was her second artwork, her second piece, and then this, I think, was her third, and then this was her fourth, and then it just went on like that. So what I actually had family friends and people that I knew who discouraged me from, I wanted to get the IKEA blackboard whiteboard combo. I'm not sure what it's called. It's not in this room right now. And I was discouraged from it because, kids draw on the walls, and, like if you give them that level of freedom. Hi, Aya, I think you've left a message. My almost 4 is still in the midst of her sensitive period for small objects every teeny time. My son, actually, he loves bugs for some reason, which really, really freaks me out because I don't like bugs. But from a very young age, I think since he was around 6 months, he's very, very, very into it. Like he tried to eat a bunch of roaches sometime. It was a whole thing. Even like I think a month ago, we met some people by Corniche for a barbecue, and he was the only kid who would. He went off. He was on his own, and I had a feeling he was up to something. Found him next to the bin, you know, the ones that they never clean, and there was a bug, and he was just like touching it, and it was a whole thing. So yes, the eel. Sorry, like I'm very uncomfortable in front of a camera. Words just go out of my head sometimes. So when I wanted to get that, I was discouraged. They're like, they're gonna draw on the walls, and it's gonna be a whole thing. And I'm like, yes, obviously she is gonna draw on the walls. This was before my son came along, so I'm like, she is definitely gonna draw on the walls, but her only environment to express herself. And at the time, we were at home most of the time. I hadn't discovered playgroups, and we didn't really have that much of a social life either. So I'm like, but how else is she going to express herself? So I let it be, and I was like discouraged. And I mean, I didn't really have the best positive feedback on it, but I just went ahead with it. I got it, and then they have the roll of paper, and I draped it over it, and I'm like, do whatever you want, whenever you want. Your paints are here, your colors are here, whatever you want. And it's not that she didn't attempt to paint on the walls, draw on the walls. She painted the bookshelf once. She did try drawing on the walls, but I would redirect her. I'm like, see, you have your freedom, do whatever, like obviously in a more at a more child level. But essentially what I did communicate was that you can do whatever you want, but this is where you have to do it. I understand, like obviously you understand, as a parent, you understand that they have a need to take out their creativity. So just do it here. They will try to draw on the walls even if you don't have an eel. Yes, that's very, very true. But at least with an eel, you have somewhere appropriate to direct them. Exactly. That's. I'm so sorry. I have to tilt my head because the phone's tilted. So I have to like look weirdly to read your comments. So that's basically what I'm trying to say. Like, children will have ways of wanting to express themselves, and it might look to us as them being destructive, but they're not necessarily being destructive. They're just learning, they're experimenting, they're wanting to learn from their environment. And if it's something that we find that's not really headed in a favorable direction, we can always redirect them, but we would have to facilitate that. Like, we can't just take their colors away, take their paints away, like, no, you're creating a mess. This is not going to happen anymore. Especially raising kids in a country like Saudi Arabia, where everything's really closed off. You're going to have to really find a community, find people around you, find places to go. And we live in closed apartments. Like, I grew up in a compound. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed in that way, but I'm living in an apartment now. And I can't really expect my children to just, keep quiet, sit down and just do their work in one place. That's never going to happen. And like, just imagine the mental toll it's going to take on their head. Hi, Muniza. Even I keep directing Sufyan. He finds walls. Yes, they do. Something else that also worked at one time was that I would, up to their reachable area, I would stick the whole wall with paper. Not ideally the best thing, because that way it kind of facilitates them drawing on the walls. But it did limit the mess. I mean, even now I do have work of art on the walls. I don't know if you guys can see. Right above their bed, my son found a red crayon. Yeah, it was a crayon. And he went nuts. I haven't even bothered to clean it up. My sister is trying to put up a mural over there, up until she sprained her ankle. So there's a reason why people become more... That's a very true, mural artist, yes. Yeah, I mean, and I feel especially me coming from a South Asian background, and I see, and my husband and I, we talk about this very often. We come from an environment where what is encouraged is, sit down, keep quiet, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're small, the whole Matilda mentality. And it tends to really limit our creativity. And when I look at, and I'm not saying that, and even me, like, you take me for an example, I am very, very, like, it might not show because you can't see my face, but I'm very uncomfortable in front of a camera. I'm not comfortable publicly, like speaking in public. A lot of things, a lot of social norms become very difficult for us because we are very limited in expressing ourselves while we grow up. So that tends to happen a lot. But you have, and I'm not saying like, the West is amazing, everything's right. No, everyone has their pluses and minuses. But kids brought up in the West are more comfortable expressing themselves because a sense of individuality is cultivated from a very early age. And even if you look at, like for now, what comes to mind is influencers. You have social media influencers from Sri Lanka. I've started following a couple of them recently. And just a small interview, and they're so uncomfortable in front of the camera. They might have been doing it for years, but they are still not 100% in their skin, comfortable in their skin in front of a camera. And like, like it just gets us talking because for us, for my husband and I, we have our kids in school, but we're not really focused on the academics of it. We are more focusing on their PR skills and just like, getting to know people, talking, communicating, that kind of a thing. And so we're just trying to figure out what we need to facilitate with our kids in order for them to be able to be more comfortable doing things in public, coming out, speaking out. My daughter is a bit of an introvert, but my son is extroverted. So we're just trying to facilitate that and basically catering to their needs. But also trying to encourage them a little bit, not too much, not so much that they are very uncomfortable, but a little bit out of their comfort zones as well. My daughter being very introverted, she is good. If you give her a notebook, give her a pencil, she'll sit in and she's been like this. She loves writing for almost 2 years now. She loves it, just like she's good for hours on end, just with a pencil and a paper and she's good. She's good. But my son, he just needs to go out, fight. Like he's a big fighter. Muniza, you might be knowing that. He and Sufyan just keep getting at it every Wednesday. So it's just like, different kids have different needs. They have different sensitive periods. And like catering to that can definitely, that does not necessarily mean you limit their experiences to only what they want. It's always good to encourage them, always good to get them out of their comfort zones, but maybe a step at a time as opposed to, no, this is not what we're going to do. We're going to do something else because I think this is what's best for you. But, and it took me a long time to learn this as well because this is the culture that's cultivated. You being an individual, generally, you know what's best for you, and that applies to the child as well. The child knows what they need. We don't and I'm not saying that I'm not talking about life decisions. Obviously, like the wisdom of a parent is always important, but when it comes to small mundane things, the child is definitely able to know what they need, what physical, mental, psychological needs that they have. They're definitely going to be able to tell that. And if we can understand that, read that, facilitate that, we can get the best outcomes out of that. And it's going to be easier, happier, like everyone's just going to be all around satisfied. The child's development is going to be amazing. That's essentially, something else that I did when my daughter was going through her sensitive period for water was that I would increase bath time. That's something you can do. Like if you don't have a tub, just get a basin, or if you have a tub, let them soak for a little bit longer. Just let them experiment, give them different cups. Like you don't necessarily have to do exactly like the strict Montessori system. I know it's very difficult to incorporate Montessori at home, being like having the limited resources that we have here. So there's always like an in-between way that you can do it. You don't have to do it in either extreme. There's always something in the middle that you can compromise with and go with. So, yeah, I think, let me just go through I have my notes over here. Yeah, that's essentially, that's basically what I wanted to talk about. Again, I've definitely not done justice to this. It's such an extensive topic, and it's such an interesting topic when you get into it. And I do recommend, yes, Montessori-ish. Aya does have a wonderful Facebook group called Montessori-ish in the GCC. I recommend that you guys join it. Such a good group, very informative, and you get that middle path compromising version of Montessori. And yes, I mean, it's really good. Your name isn't Aya, by the way. I'm so sorry. I keep calling you Aya, but your name is Eva. I'm so sorry. It just keeps coming. I'm just so mentally used to reading that. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so essentially that's all there is to it. Like, that's not all that's there to it, but that's all that I have. Like, I don't want to take everyone's time, too much of everyone's time. I just generally try to limit it to 20 minutes. So, but I do recommend that you guys read up on it. It's such a really wonderful topic when you get into it, and it really helps us understand our kids way better. Okay, that's fine then. So, yeah, so I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Hopefully, I might be doing a collaboration, hopefully. I still need to work things out. I will probably be in Riyadh then, so I'm not really sure how logistics is going to work out, but inshallah, I should be able to figure something out. So, yes, thank you guys again for watching. Thank you for joining me on these episodes. I truly appreciate it. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Assalamu alaikum.